like my
No. Is that liquid or is that just pencil stuff? Some of it's dry. Most of it's dry.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Scott's on his way. Let's go ahead and stand and say the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to start out tonight with a moment of silence in honor of a student named Terrence from White's, who was on a home pass, I understand, this past weekend, and tragically passed away in a car accident. So if you would, let's just have a moment of silence for him. Thank you. Future board meetings, May 11th and 25th and June 8th, all here at our regular time at 6 p.m. We have no revisions to the agenda, and so we'll start with public recognition. We have a recommendation to approve a $140 donation from the Wabash County Sheriff's Department for the Southwood Elementary to purchase snacks for the Little Knights and kindergarten classes. Also, a recommendation to approve a $100 donation in the form of a gift card from Harbor Freight for Southwood Elementary's robotics. A recommendation to approve a $300 donation from an anonymous donor for Northfield softball, and a recommendation to approve a $1,600 donation, $500 from Hoffman's Nursery and Landscaping, $500 from McKinsey Food, $300 for McKillop Seeds, and $300 for Agrochem, all for the Northfield softball and baseball programs. A recommendation to approve the $300 donation from Shemwell & Sons for Northfield softball. And finally, the recommendation to approve a $110 donation from Jonathan Flott for Northfield track.
May I say one thing about the Sheriff's Department? I think this is kind of fun, though. Part of that is Sheriff Baker has allowed the deputies to grow beards. Typically, they don't grow beards, and so they allowed them for a donation to grow beards, and so that's how they have raised their funds, and they said it would be for different schools and things like that. So we appreciate them, along with everybody else. I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing that they did to help the community and help our schools.
With gratitude, all motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and second to approve the very generous donations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. School recognition. We'll start with Mrs. Moore.
Thank you. First thing to share is last week our kindergarten students went on a field trip to Paradise Springs, and joining them were 4 Northfield seniors, Keaton Stout, Clay Herring, Ethan Galbraith, I think that's how you say his last name, and Ben Kessel. And they have created ArcLight historical tours, and our kindergartners, for their first official customers, they have created this business model through Grow Wabash as part of I believe, competition, correct, Mr. Snyder?
Yep.
But this business idea stemmed where they're wanting to do tours downtown, and so they were in costume and role play, and our kindergartners loved it. And if you've been around kindergartners, they are a tough audience. They tell you the truth every single time. And so when I asked them what they thought about it, they gave great reviews. So it was exciting, and several of those guys are Metro North alum. So their kindergarten teachers were pretty proud of them. We also had a parent that, even though our closure due to COVID was over a year ago, that reached out to celebrate Mrs. Stacy Bone and the support that she gave her daughter, who's now a 2nd grader, but when she was in Stacy's 1st grade class, the parent shared that even though school was closed and during the summer, Mrs. Bone made sure that every student in her class felt like they had someone to talk to and was truly there for them. And then she also commented how Mrs. Bone believes in her students and their dreams, and that she continues to push them to be the best that they can be. Lastly, we just want to thank our junior achievement volunteers. We have had, I think, 7 volunteers this school year through junior achievement come into our kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade classrooms to deliver some community-based curriculum that aligns with our economics and social studies standards. They give, it's either 5 to 6 weeks, but about an hour a week for that instruction. Some do more than one classroom. So thanks to Ben McFarland, Jennifer Nestler, Tiffany Weaver, Trisha Oswalt, Jet Snyder, Ashley Sheets, Christine Chamberlain, and then I had one more, whose name I forgot to put on the list. And
The anticipation is building.
I know. I'm so sorry. Brandy Stackhouse. So we appreciate them coming in and teaching our kids about our community. And that is all from the
Mr. McDaniel next. Just go in order here.
All right. We would like to recognize the students, the choir students who participated in the ISMA District Vocal, Piano, and Solo and Ensemble Contest. We had 13 high school students, SHS at junior high had 19 junior high students and 13 high school students. Gotta get my eyes checked, excuse me. 26 entries, and we brought home 22 gold ratings, 3 silver ratings, and 1 bronze. And so very good there. We also had, we received an exemplary behavior report for boys baseball with their game against Madison Grant on April 19th. The report reads, it's clear that the coaching staffs for both Southwood and Madison Grant have worked to instill the value of respect in their players, respect for their teammates, their opponents, and umpires. Being able to officiate a game with this kind of positive atmosphere was a pleasure. Players were polite and respectful and approached the game the right way. I commend both programs for their efforts, commented from the umpire. We'd also like to thank our senior sponsors, Carrie Johnson and Cynthia Bell, for planning, organizing, attending the senior trip to Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Kids were able to see some really, really wonderful sights while they were there. And I think that we really need to recognize Melissa Ball because she volunteered her time to drive down there. And so it's really challenging to drive a school bus on the highway for that long, but she was taking us up to different places in the mountains. And I used to drive a Honda Civic. I wouldn't trust my Civic to dodge all those ins and outs, but she was able to do it flawlessly. So outstanding driver. We also want to recognize seniors Alex Weiner and AJ Getz. They both qualified and presented at the Regional Innovate Within competition. Alex placed 2nd and is in the running for the wild card spot for this state. AJ did not place. They only recognized the 1st and 2nd places. And then Mrs. Johnson's Introduction to Business class will be competing Wednesday, tomorrow, in the county competition. We'd also, just today, we received word from U.S. News and World Report. Southwood is recognized as one of the top schools in the nation and in Indiana for our status with student performance on state and math language arts assessments, student performance on college level exams, or basically the advanced placement exams, and our graduation rate. And so I think that might be all of it from me. I'm sorry, one more thing. The Indiana Basketball Coaches Association announced its top high school basketball all-state teams, including the Supreme 15. It's a list of top senior athletes, and this was on March 24th, so we haven't had a board meeting in a while. Carson Rich, grade 12, made the small school all-state team, and he holds just a host of records, and is our number 2 leading scorer. So congratulations to him.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
From Sharp Creek, we have, would like to celebrate 2 student groups that have been active in the past few weeks. First of all, way to go to the Battle of the Books competition students for a fantastic job. This competition is sponsored and put on by the Wabash Carnegie Public Library. Students are asked to read 8 books and then answer many questions about the details in the books, and they do put in quite a lot of practice time together, obviously reading the books on their time too. We scored 2 nearly perfect rounds of 11 out of 12 points. Team members from the 6th grade, Dawson Texera, Ashlyn Macy, Sage Martin, Kiana Bretzman. 5th graders, Colin Beal, Montgomery Dawes, Michaela Shue, and Callie McClure. And 4th graders, Alexis LaFerny, Patrick Nessler, Kira Oswald, Sienna Stauffer, Addie Bretzman, and Chase Ross. And they did all do a fantastic job. And also want to thank Mrs. Bretzman for being the lead on that. And then the other group is our Math Bowl team this year, who competed in a virtual competition, different than the norm, but virtually. Battle of the Books was virtual also. This team was led by Mrs. Saunders, so we want to thank her. But the team was made up of 14 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students: Electra Merrill, Sienna Stoffel, Jonathan Young, Easton McKillop, Gavin Lester, Joseph Hall, Nate Hodgson, Bryce Peterson, Jasmine Gill, Hayden Copeland, Chloe Youngblood, Eli Shue, Sage Martin, and Landon McLaughlin. Students worked hard to improve their abilities on numerous problems and challenge themselves. They did practice on Monday and Wednesday mornings, which is in and of itself a challenge sometimes. Had a great time competing, getting to work through challenging problems as a team, and each member of the team played a key role in the achievement, so great job to all of them. So just appreciate those students, appreciate that we have staff that are willing to take on those activities and give students opportunities.
All right, thank you. Mr. McDivitt.
I would like to speak a moment about Terrence, and thank you, Mr. Daisy, for on the silence set. That means a lot. Thank you very much. I know that Terrence was on his first home pass. And what that means is he had progressed in his program to the point where he had earned, he was coming to an end to his placement. Probably had another month, 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks to go. So this is his first home pass, and Terrence, like a lot of our kids, come to us with a host of challenges, but I would say Terrence probably more so than most of our kids was just a tough kid. But underneath that tough exterior, a leader was really starting to develop on campus, and that obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but it was very noticeable on Monday and the day since. Just other tough kids, just reflecting on how much Terrence meant to them. And so Terrence was way behind on credits when he started with us in November, and he had worked really hard on his classes, and his goal was to graduate before he left, and he was working on the Core 40 diploma. So when I let staff know Saturday morning what had happened, Mr. Biggs, our counselor, did some transcript checking, and we are able to award a posthumous, how's that word? Posthumously. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Martin. For a general diploma. He will not earn the Core 40 diploma. So haven't actually talked to his grandmother yet, his grandmother, Mrs. Guardian, but we'll figure out the right time and place to present that diploma and to his grandmother, essentially. So it is. It's never easy. It's not the first time I have been in a building that's lost a student. It's never easy. If there's anything good that can come of it, it does give these kids that have been close to him an opportunity to just reflect and to think about, what his Terrence taught me and how do I want to move forward, with that knowledge. So that's our hope and our prayer that his death will not be, certainly in vain. Then on another note, I do want to celebrate Chris Whitaker. He's one of our teachers at school. About 14 months ago, I approached Chris, who's a retired band choir teacher, and asked Chris, would you be interested? I said, no pressure. I said, I was just planting the seed. But would you be interested in creating a choir at school? And I didn't even let him ask me any questions or give me any feedback. I said, I'm just going to throw that out there and I'll come back and check with you later. So the very next day, Chris comes to see me And he'd been thinking about it all day, and so it sounds like he's interested. So obviously COVID hit, and we didn't get to start choir last year. Started this year, of course, pretty crazy, but we actually started in March, our girls choir class. And long story short, Chris is doing a fantastic job. We were able to find a keyboard that been in storage at Northfield, just collecting dust. It's working great, by the way. So we're able to put that to use, and Mr. Whitaker will tell you, there's various talent levels within the group. And so, but he is doing some really cool things. So last week was Mr. Boyer's birthday, and he was able to get the girls to sing in a two-part harmony, happy birthday to him over the PA system. And honestly, they did a really nice job. And so we are hoping, as this progresses, to do some public performances when that time's right. Probably start at one of the student chapels, but we'd certainly like to get them out into the community as well. That's a long-term goal. But really, Chris has done a fantastic job. And it's really cool as a principal to tap into a passion of one of your teachers, because Chris is passionate about it. He is really enjoying it. And so I'm enjoying watching him enjoy it and just helping those girls experience a new level of just connection to their school, something different to do. So it's been really cool.
All right. And I don't know, Mr. Snyder, you're not on the list here, and I know there was a switch, and I didn't know what happened for sure, but anyway.
Well, May 11th, we have our senior honors banquet at North.
Okay.
And then I'm leaving with the 8th and 9th grade to go to DC.
Okay.
So I won't be able to be here.
Yeah.
And so I'm here tonight.
So I saw that on the list, and I don't know how I didn't get on here, but you're next.
So I won't be here on May 11th. I don't want to miss the bus to DC. Our girls softball team got an exemplary behavior report from William Ball, who was the umpire. He said Northfield coaches, players, and parents grilled out and had purposely prepared enough food to invite our entire umpire team to join them on Saturday, which was 2 weeks ago, I think. He said, I would like to nominate the Northfield softball team for their hospitality during our doubleheader on Saturday. It was genuinely a kind gesture, and it provided a very welcoming environment for our team to compete in. So I think they just made enough to let the coaches from the other team and the umpires all eat. So it's nice when you hear the good stuff from the umpires once in a while. Another one was for the baseball team. This was from AD Eric Heisner from Eastern, and he's the AD and head baseball coach at Eastern. And he said Eastern was playing NHS at Kokomo, and there were 2 games. I guess they use a stadium in Kokomo to play. I didn't make it to that one. But the game was supposed to start like at 6:30 or 7, and the first game went long, and the second game with Northfield didn't start till 8. And he said the Northfield coaching staff and student athletes were very understanding of the inconvenience, handled the situation with great flexibility in class. This is a direct reflection of their head coach, Tori Schaefer. He does a great job with the North's baseball program, teaches the student athletes not only to play the game the right way on the field, but also to represent their school in a positive manner off the field. Eastern greatly appreciated how the Northfield baseball coaches and student athletes handled the situation and themselves on Monday night. And then I also had a Battle of the Books team of 7th and 8th graders that competed the same as Mr. Martin did at Sharp Creek, which I found is harder to do. I know the kids, having had them at Sharp Creek, so I'm like, you're doing it, you're doing it, you're doing it. Because they get in junior high, there's a million other things they can do, and so they don't want to do it as well, but they ought to. So we had a team, and they did real well. Those participants that competed virtually were Ashton Aderman, Patience Foudray, Logan Graft, Anna Hodson, Jasmine Kelly, Anna Osborne, and Cody Geiser. So I just want to thank them for participating, and Mrs. McKillop, our media center teacher, for sponsoring the team and spending the time making that available to the kids. And then we also, I wanted to thank our seniors that earned the honor and went and attended the Grow Wabash County Honor Student Luncheon. I think it was a week ago, last Thursday, so a little over a week ago. And those seniors that attended, it was on April 13th, were Logan Cox, Michael Fisher, Emma Hoover, Abby Hunter, Jet Snyder, Tobin Bear, Alex Hopper, Emma Brainerd, Addie Baker, Lindsay Carter, Elise Gottschalk, Chloe Miller, and Jenna Crum. And even though a couple of them, including my son, said they weren't going, a promise to Kelly's Ice Cream afterward got them all there. So I ratted them out, but whatever it takes. And then I also just want to thank, it's not on here, but Mr. McDaniel reminded me, and I don't know if I've had this on here, Ryan Zincroft and Shelley Myers for the senior trip that they just planned because we couldn't go to New York this year. And then Denise Stoffer and a lot of juniors and parents that helped put on prom last weekend and post-prom went really, really well. And the kids were awesome, no issues. It was foggy, I was worried about them getting home, but we didn't have any issues. And so I just appreciated all the parents and teachers' help getting all this done. And thanks to everybody in here for getting it done and allowing it to happen before graduation. I will say MSD is one of the few districts that have tried to keep things as normal as possible. And everything I hear from parents is that it's much appreciated. And I'm sure you heard the same thing. And so,
Okay,
Is that it?
that's it for now.
All right, let's move on to public comment, agenda items only. And we'll wait for Facebook feed to catch up. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda items. The minutes for the last meeting on March 23rd, which is, I guess, a month ago already. We need to have approval of those.
So, second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes from our last board meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to financials, claims.
I had one or two, and I'm not prepared to find them. I always look for the large numbers, Chris.
I know you do.
That's
So do I.
good.
So, that's a pretty large number.
Well, sometimes I just ask for my own information's sake, it's not,
That'll be the one on page 3.
yes. You had the same thing, Todd?
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. The second group, page 3, was that it?
Yeah, the gaggle.
So Gaggle, I don't know much about it. You might be able to talk a little bit more about it. We have a safe mail service that
It's a human monitoring system for,
monitors our emails and things on our devices as far as messages and things of that nature. And if they see something that is inappropriate or of concern, then they notify an administrator to deal with the issue. Safe Mail, I think, is what it was called,
safe mail human monitoring.
and we have not been pleased with some of the things that they have
The time.
not been catching, and the timing of some of those responses to us about those issues. And so they looked for another service, which is this Gaggle service. And so that's a 3-year, to get a reduced price, we had to make a 3-year commitment for that.
And it's for student safety, and they actually did a test run for 2 or 3 months and compared it to what the other program was doing, and it caught a lot more, and so, and in a timely fashion. And so it's very critical. If there's for student safety, if there's a self-harm situation, and you find out about it 2 days afterwards, and some of the principals can contest to this, that it's not going to be appropriate. So that's why we're looking for something different in it. And sometimes when you have a more robust system, it's going to cost a little bit more. But this is a 3-year.
That pays for 3 years?
That pays
Yes,
for 3
that
years.
pays for 3 years.
Yes. And it is more expensive than the other, but it provides more looks as far as other programs besides just our email. The other one is supposed to be like Google Drive documents and things like that, but it's just it's a lot larger and more robust. Something needed. Keep
So
it
this
safe.
includes all the setup and training.
Yes.
Besides the licensing fees.
Yeah.
The McGarry roofing repair, is that Sharp Creek?
No, that was Metro North.
Yes. Good question, though.
I'll move to approve claims.
Second.
Motion and second to approve claims, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Payroll, number 18 and 19, we got two payrolls there.
I don't really have much to
This is pretty standard.
say about those.
Move to approve both of those, 18 and 19, is that the number?
Second. Motion and second to approve payroll, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Financial summaries, Dr. Coon.
Yeah, seems like old information since this was the end of May and we're getting ready to end April, or end of March and we're getting ready to end April. But these were the end of the month statements then for March time period, just reflecting balances again. Nothing specific to focus on or talk about there. And then the next pages reflect the education and operations fund balances from the end of the month cash flow for March, and not much has changed there. One difference is that we know what our dollars will be remaining from April to June. Because of our February 1 ADM count, so those dollars are actually reflected in there, in that change. And then obviously we got good news from the state budget, and so we're still working out what some of those details, and then eventually we get those plugged into our cash flow estimates once we have a better idea of what those dollar amounts include and what our estimate ADM is. Remember, we have to put in an estimate ADM. I believe I put in an estimate of 2,000 students in there. So our revenue from July through October will reflect that. And then once we get our new ADM count in September, then those adjustments will be made for the remainder of the school year for those dollar amounts.
Is the state tweaking the formula for the ADM pay, like special ed?
Yes. So there are
increases
increases. There are increases in what we call the foundational amount, which includes complexity,
Right.
which is a little confusing, but it includes complexity index. We actually lose money on the complexity side, but we gain money on the foundational side. And then there is an increase in special ed dollars for certain categories. And then no additional dollars for CTE, but they brought it back some of the CTE,
Low rate wage.
what do you call it? It's just like,
Basic.
The low wage, well, they call it the low wage because there's a high wage and low wage.
There's all those different categories.
Yeah.
They were taking some of those categories out,
Yeah.
but they brought them back in, but there's no additional funding from that. They just put those categories back in. And then honors, no additional funding for the honors grant. So really it's just foundational and special ed dollars where we'll see an increase in that. So good news there. And then operation, I didn't have to change much on anything but that, because that's not tied to ADM or anything like that at this point. So we don't have to go through all of this, but I kind of like to show this every once in a while. So since we kind of ended March, which is the first, kind of considered the first quarter, I just kind of wanted to show you how those transfers are going. Remember,
We are required not to transfer more than 15% of our educational fund dollars into the operational fund. So out of these past 3 months, it shows that we've transferred 12.49% of our operation dollars, and that's really only led to about $11,000 in deficit, I guess, if you consider comparison from what accounts used to be paid out of that fund that are no longer paid out of that fund.
That tracks pretty well with the same percentages last year.
Yeah, if you go through the rest of them, I think I show the last year's percentage. This would be if we did actuals. And then the next slide, this was last year's.
So it was like 100th.
Yeah.
12.48 versus 12.49 this year.
Yeah, I had a double take on that because I thought maybe it just.
I just copied it.
These aren't real numbers.
Yeah. It was all made up.
Like when you copy from somebody's test, just change one of the numbers.
Yeah.
No, that's really impressive though, and it's impressive to make sure that, well, it needs to be lower than
But
that.
if you also see last year, out of the 12 months, we did do 12, but we also transferred, I don't want to say a surplus, but we transferred more money than was probably needed to how it worked out by the end of the year. So.
Thank you, Dr. Coon. Move on to personnel. Under resignations, we have Megan Mission and Roberta Herring, both aides at Northfield High School, effective at the end of the school year. Jory Pattee, secretary at Southwood. You see the effective date there. Retirement, Susan Kiefer, choir teacher at Southwood. Carrie Hamill, math teacher at Southwood, and Rhonda Kirby, aide at Southwood. And those are all effective at the end of this year or this summer. Under employment, Elena Raid, junior high cheer at Northfield High School. Joseph Mitchell, Spanish teacher at Northfield for next school year, and Alyssa Span, special ed teacher at Northfield for next school year.
And if I can just mention Mr. Daisy, Susan Kiefer, she actually came to us after she came back from retirement. She did a fantastic job, so we're just glad that we had her for a few more years after her official retirement. And if Mr. McDaniel was here, he would echo the great things that she did. Successful. You know, I talked to you just not very long ago about how many students that were auditioned for the state choir, and all of them made it, and all the other things that she did was great. And then Carrie Hamill, been with MSD for many years. He was at White's Junior Senior High School, transferred to Southwood, has been coaching, done a lot of things, really builds relationships with students and does a great job. And I know Mr. McDaniel would also do that. Rhonda Kirby as an aide, done that for a long time. So we're losing some very, very good people, but we wish them well in their retirement. And in the employment part too, it's kind of neat to see the first two are actually, I'm almost sure for the first one. I thought she's a Northfield graduate.
Yes.
Right? And then, of course, Joseph Mitchell is also a Northfield graduate, has been teaching. Mr. Snyder knows more about that than me. He was at Fort Wayne, right? Cherubusco, and so coming back home, which is great. And then Alyssa Span, who was actually a substitute teacher for Sharp Creek, because we had those different sections there, and she had an open position. She wasn't going to have a position at Sharp Creek, but now she's been hired at Northfield. So although we're losing some great people, we're also gaining great people too. So.
I move to the slate.
Motion and second to approve to the HR slate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We will miss those teachers. Heartland Career Center report. Matt, you have anything to see here for us?
Real quick, they added an adult welding class. We approved that. They're gonna apply for a 21-22 Perkins grant. We authorized a student scholarship program, which we've done the last few years. taking the rent money from the land and giving it out, I think $1,000 to 7 or 8 kids that are going on to school. We accepted a grant from Perkins Reserve Grant of $38,866, and that's to go towards the ag program. And also got a Gene Haas Foundation grant, and I can't tell you the dollar amount on that. But they're planning on having the senior certificate honor program May 24th at Honeywell, trying to get as much as normal as they can, just can't have as many people, but that's still the plan. And we had one student, which is really neat, got enough credits done at Vincennes in criminal justice that they will only have 1 year at Vincennes to get their. So it's really neat that they've got that much going on with dual credits and so on there. Isn't that neat? That's it.
All right, thank you. Superintendent's report, Mr. Kefauver.
Yeah, and most of these are just recognitions, and some of them have already been mentioned. I know that Mrs. Moore mentioned some of this, Mr. McDaniel and Mr. Snyder, but we have a lot of students that are competing in that Innovate Within, and had an opportunity to watch. They had to stream it on the regional competition where Alex Weiner got second place, and hopefully will be able to go to state. Did a fabulous job though, and the other kids did also. And we have tomorrow is actually the local competition, and it's amazing. I believe we have, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 teams, at least 4 teams from Southwood, at least 2 or 3 teams from Northfield. And so we appreciate those teachers that are helping those students be able to work on that and compete. And some of these, just like Alex Weiner, Alex is going to, with his Busy Bees, he's going to go right out of high school. He's going to go and continue his career as Busy Bees to build that up, plus do some other things, maybe with his dad. But anyway, just interesting how they've taken this on and done a great job. So just wanted to mention that. Also, I asked Mr. McDivitt when I was at one of the graduation ceremonies if I could share this at one of the board meetings, and so I'm going to do this. And this is from Molly. Molly was a graduate, and they actually get to give, basically, what do you tell them? You're telling them to give advice to the other students, right? How's that work?
I allow them to say two things. One, people they want to thank that helped them get there, and then 2, just words of wisdom they want.
And here's one of them. There's a lot of great ones, I will tell you. And this is just one I thought this would be interesting to share because, we heard the situation with Terrence. There's a lot of great things going on there, and unfortunately with Terrence, but yet the leadership and things. But this is from Molly, and this is what she wrote to the advice to share with the other students. It says, I know being here isn't ideal. No one asked to be here, but don't sit here and waste your time. I know not everyone is here because they struggle with addictions. But whatever you're here for, take this time to better yourself. And remember, no matter your past or how many bad things you've done, God will always love and forgive you when you ask for it. And so just really very special, and the things that they learn at White's, not just necessarily at the school, but also with the residential and the collaboration that they have with the two. So I just wanted to share that. Thought that was really neat. Also, I'm going to, I put this on here. We don't always talk about these different things, but the General Assembly, of course, Dr. Kuhn already mentioned that, but the increases, we really appreciate that. Of course, ADM is another factor to all that, and so we will continue to work and promote and do well with that. And then not a normal thing that we would report, but it is great that this year we were able to have, like we said, the proms, we've had the senior trips are all on schedule, and we're looking forward to having graduation, and not necessarily having any capacity limit at this point. I mean, things are really good. Hopefully that continues. So anybody that wants to come can come. We may have a few little minimal restrictions, protocol like we have to have in schools with masks when you walk in or something like that. But for the most part, it should feel and look as normal as what we've had before, pending no other situations with COVID. So it's just great that we're going to be able to finish the year and have school and continue to do the activities that we're doing.
All right, thank you. Curriculum and instruction report, Mr. Gray.
As usual, we're testing, and so this round we're in iLearn, and we've got a week or 2 left of that, and things are going very well. I do want to say that we've been working on accelerated learning through the ESSER grants, and so I know Mike's kind of filled you on some of that earlier, but really proud of what we're putting together for summer school for our elementary kids, and some of the other socio-emotional learning things that we're meeting, and so trying to take full advantage of those funds to try our best to accelerate learning, I guess, is just the simplest way to say that. And so lots of conversations, lots of great conversations from our principals to get all that stuff going. So let's start to roll out now. That's it.
Accelerated learning as in trying to catch up to COVID efficiency.
Yeah. The conversation at first was about talking about efficiencies, but when you're talking to kids that are struggling and then you say, hey, by the way, you're efficient, like all you're doing is doing like the negative of that. And so by framing it as an accelerated learning, now we're helping those kids and some of the kids that were not struggling anyways. And so you're gonna see, we'll use some of those funds to, like I said, expand summer school, but also try to find ways to offer more programs and more opportunities for kids where we are.
Parents will buy into that if they need, kids need to catch up.
Of course, the older the child, the harder it is to get them to do some of that stuff. And so we see a lot of interest in our K-3 group. 4 to 6 has a little bit less interest, and of course, with high school, it's even harder. But for sure, the K-3 was the most impacted. And so we feel very confident about that group. We're going to be able to use those funds to pay our teachers regular hourly rates to get them in there. And so we're bringing in our veteran teachers and giving them a lot of attention. So it's a special opportunity, and I think we're all excited to offer that. Yeah.
All right, moving on to new business. First item under new business is a bond hearing that we're going to have, and I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Kuhn.
Yes, so I don't know if we have to do anything necessarily formal here, but
We will
Just-
after you make your,
do what?
we have to after you make your recommendation.
Okay. So according to Indiana Code, anytime that we are going to finance some projects that are over $1 million, we have to have a bond hearing, which is open to the public for comment. And so we posted a notice for that project hearing in April 17th, meeting that legal requirement. And so this is our bond hearing in regards to the money that we're planning on borrowing. So the project will cover primarily, the majority of it will be spent at the 2 high schools on roof repairs. We also have some additional work that we're doing or plan on doing with ceiling tiles and our network and fiber cables within those buildings to upgrade some of those. And then additional money to be spent out at Metro North, looking at their parking lot, fixing up the parking lot on the west side, and then possibly doing a restroom renovation of some capacity there to fix those up a little bit. Right now, the roof replacements have gone out for bid, and I believe that those bids are due on May 2nd. And then we put out for quotes the ceiling tiles and the fiber and cable installation. We're also working on the quotes with the parking lot, and we're kind of in the basic stages of looking at the restroom repairs with that, so we haven't gotten too far along with that yet. If you slide over to the next page, this gives you an idea of the roof sections that are going to be replaced. They all match up at both buildings except for that middle section there, where that is just being fixed at Northfield because it was already replaced at Southwood about 10 years ago when they did some of the roofing projects back then. So it wasn't anything that needed to be changed at this point in time.
And so that reflects I wonder why there was a difference in price in the roofs.
Yeah. So that reflects the difference in prices there.
Okay.
The ceiling tiles, we had them do an initial quote or bid for the hallways with some alternatives in the office space areas, the main entrance area, and the auditorium entryway as well, to fix those up, similar to what we did in the athletic hallway with the 2-foot square tiles, I believe it is. And so our maintenance crew is going to do some of that as far as the tear down is concerned. And so since we had that tear down, it's also a good time to update our fiber infrastructure. It's been around since the early 90s. We've just kind of piecemealed it together as technology has grown. And so some of those cords and fibers are becoming brittle. And this will allow us to put them all on a track so that we can gain easier access to them, plus allow us to upgrade to be able to push more data through those networks. So as part of the bond hearing, we talk about the cost of the project and the money's borrowing. So we plan on borrowing $2 million. There will be no net increase to the debt service fund tax rate relative to the current rate. So that does not increase that debt service tax rate that's already established. It extends it out for another year. So the bonds, instead of being paid at the end of 2022, they'll be paid at the end of 2023 with no impact on tax rate. And then the second thing then just shows kind of the when those bonds will begin payment. So it talks a little bit about the interest rate, the maximums, not spending, so we won't be borrowing more than $2 million. Our interest rate won't exceed 5%. I talked with Jim Elizondo from Stiefel today a little bit about it, and interest rates, he said right now, if we were to take this to bid right now, are hovering around 0.5%. So hopefully we can still stay in that market range of getting a pretty good interest rate when those bonds go out to bid. So with that being said, then we would open the hearing to
Usually I'd
public
like to open a
comments.
public comment period for the bond hearing. Typically, we would only have to do that to those actually present in the room, but we will extend that again to those watching us on Facebook Live because of the public emergency. I guess we are still under officially for the schools.
For clarity then, Chris, 1 year.
Yeah, extends it to 2023, yep.
No,
We'll start payments on those bonds in 2022, and they'll conclude at the end of 2023.
The bathrooms at Metro North was just the 3 for each of the
6 of them.
6
bathrooms, 3 girls, 3 boys.
Okay, so
Yes.
for each of the whole pods.
Yes.
that we were-
Yep. And we're still working on some of those details on that. Obviously, expense will be considered as far as what can be done, what can't be done when it comes to that. So I know that Adam is checking right now on some things with the state in regards to some of the ideas we put out there. If we do that, do we have to do a full ADA renovation of it? And so he's just kind of working out some of those details to make sure we're not put in a situation where we would have to do some type of full renovation.
if the funding happens to slip away from us on all the other, then we could pull out capital projects to do what's needed on those.
Yes,
bathrooms,
right.
Because there should be some margin.
Yes, yep.
And on the roof thing, Steve, does this complete 100% of everything in the last 10 years?
In the high school.
Yeah, the high school. Because I was going to ask Matt how many millions of dollars they spent on these roofs. Just
And that doesn't mean in anher 5 or 10 years, there won't be an additional sections that will need to be revisited because it is piecemeal together with that,
The
so.
Lord invented gravity for a reason. I'm sorry.
I'm not seeing any public comment.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? And you guys are still considered public too, so if you have any questions. Okay, with that, we will close the bond hearing and move on to the recommendations to approve these resolutions.
So there's just a little description about those resolutions. I kind of went over them in the bond hearing. So the first resolution, or Exhibit A, really just establishes the estimated cost of the project, the tax impact, and the timing of that impact. And so we would make a recommendation then to approve the project resolution, Exhibit A. I don't know if you want to do these individually.
Yeah, let's just do them individually.
I'm looking for the wording, or I didn't speak out. I couldn't find on my agenda real fast. So I move to approve the resolution for the bond exhibit A.
Appendix A, yeah. Okay,
Second.
motion and second to adopt the resolution Appendix A for the project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Exhibit B then just really establishes the maximum amount to be borrowed, the maximum term of repayment, and the maximum interest rate, which is that 2,005,000.
So that would be called the preliminary bond resolution.
I move to the preliminary bond resolution appendix B.
Second that.
Motion and second to adopt the preliminary bond resolution Appendix B. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Recommendation to adopt reimbursement resolution.
So Exhibit C, reimbursement expenditures, really allows us to go back and reimburse ourselves for any payments and related to this bond down the road. So for example, like we've already had costs for the advertisements and that type of stuff. So we could essentially reimburse ourselves for those types of payments from the bond monies moving forward until we get the, for any payments now until we get the bond, essentially. Because typically what will happen now is after all these are resolved, then there's a couple advertisements that we have to post. And then in the May 11th board meeting, we kind of have a couple more resolutions to approve, which finalizes the bond selling. And then it goes out to bid, and then we receive those funds. Typically, our goal is to receive those funds by the beginning of June. And so there's still a little time process involved with all this. And we do have some other information as far as final approval at the next board hearing, or at the next board meeting. So there'll be some advertisements and other things that we'll have to put out there. But this just allows us to reimburse ourselves for any expenditures that we've had in this throughout this process, since we don't technically have the money yet.
And this would be called the declaration of intent to reimburse expenditures.
I move to approve the declaration of intent. Is it B? C.
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 Second.
Motion and second to approve the declaration of intent to reimburse expenditures. Appendix C. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Recommendation to approve STROM for the NHS SHS ceiling replacement project. Quote with the
So we got the quotes for the ceiling tile project. We got 3 quotes, which we're required to get. Strom came back as the cheapest. So these base quotes are for both Northfield and Southwood, and then the ad alternatives then were the office area, the entryway, and the auditorium area. And so they came back to be the cheapest. Strom is the one who actually did it for our athletic entryways. When we did the flooring and painting in the buildings. And so our recommendation, along with Barton Co's recommendation, would be to use Strom for our ceiling tile project, and Steve and his crew would work with them on the timing of all that. The goal of this would obviously be done during the summertime when nobody's in the buildings and be ready for when the school year starts.
But these areas 2x4.
2x4 right now.
So we put LED lighting up in there, 2x2.
No, but 2x4s.
So we do.
They'll just stand there.
Okay, just
Make it. Are you happy with the prices? This was the best price we had,
Yeah,
and they're a good company to work with too.
I think we're anticipating about 160,000 to do the project, and so this is just over 100.
And it saved a lot for us doing all the demo on it too.
That helps save us doing some of the work too.
I always appreciate that, your efforts, Steve. I'll move to approve the recommendation for the quote ceiling.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Strom for the ceiling replacement project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Recommendation to approve Intersect Technologies for the NHS SHS network upgrade project.
So Aaron was working on these quotes to replace and update the fibering within both of those buildings. We anticipated it would be about $150,000. Intersect was the closest to that amount, and they were the lowest bidder with that. And so as the ceiling tiles are down, then Intersect would be able to go in and upgrade and replace that wiring. And then Strom would come in behind and put the ceiling tiles in. So that's kind of the plan with this. And again, working through the summer when there's less interruptions in the hallways and office areas to try to get that done before school starts.
And Intersect is more or less local too, right?
Yes, they're in Wabash, aren't they?
Where the old Mr. Steve's building is now. Steve Forster, I don't know if you remember or not.
Johnson.
I've had them do work for me at the co-op. And I'm happy with Andy and his crew.
No, I'm pleased that it's local. So I'll move to approve Intersect Technologies to do rewire.
Second.
Motion and second to approve Intersect Technologies to do the network upgrade at both the high schools. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So that is the
Yep.
end of the,
And then probably at the next board meeting, like I said, we should be getting these roof bids back, I think May 2nd. So we'll probably have a recommendation there
to do the roofing.
for those roofing, so they can get that started too. That's gonna be a project that's probably gonna go throughout the school year a little bit. The goal end date is to be done, well, on the bid, the end date was to be done by the end of December of 2021. And so there may have to be some shuffling of some classrooms and things like that a little bit, because you don't want them working directly over a classroom with people in it when they're doing different sections. So I'll take some coordination with the building and the building
I
principals.
don't know, there seems to be so many sourcing issues anymore on anything. I'll play into this or not.
Okay, the last two items we have under new business are overnight and extended trips. We're gonna handle both of those together. The first one is a recommendation to approve an overnight extended field trip for Sharp Creek Elementary 6th grade class to Camp Molinauer in Silver Lake, Indiana, May 19th to the 21st of this year. And the other recommendation is to approve an overnight extended field trip for the Southwood Junior High School 8th grade class to Washington, D.C. in May, the 10th to the 13th of 2022.
So. Sounds like it.
Motion and second to approve both field trips. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? We have no unfinished business, no board policy, any public comment on anything. We'll let Facebook catch up with us there.
I'll share Ridgway's made a couple of comments. She referred first to, she said Missy is the best. I assume it was Melissa Ball for driving down. And she thinks Dr. Coon's reports are awesome. I'm just reading it as I see it. And she echoed Kevin's interest that she was happy we were using somebody local.
And I don't know if we Northfield turned in a board approval for the DC trip. I saw Southwood on there, but we're going on the same one.
Okay. Well, you got a little while.
Too late?
They already paid for money.
Well, he's talking about 2022.
Oh, that was next week.
Yeah, yours is already good for this year. You're good.
Oh, it was 2022.
They're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, they're getting.
Right, because they already paid for it.
Your face.
All right, so we have no public comment on that. Any items from the board members? All right, we're adjourned.